Hi guys, welcome back to a new video, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I've changed location. Right now I'm in beautiful Malaga in Spain. I'm renting this very old apartment that has just been refurbished. You can still see the beautiful old ornaments in the ceiling and in the wall. They just put in a brand new kitchen. There's a couch to watch some TV. A little bit further is the bathroom. It's also completely refurbished. They just put very nice dark marble on the wall. Right now I'm facing my balcony that is looking over the square in the city center in Malaga. So it's an absolute beautiful location and a great apartment. The last video that was shot that was in Krakow in Poland. Now I can imagine that you maybe have never heard of that country or the city before. Poland is in the east of Europe and Krakow is in the south of that country. I always heard great stories about the country and the city itself, and at some point I thought, you know what, why not go there for a month, work and live there for a little bit before I go on to a next adventure, and that was of course in this case Spain. And since this is a financial channel, I thought it wouldn't be fun to make a video about how much money I spent 1 month working and living in Krakow. First, maybe a little bit about the city and the country itself. The city, there's 766,000 people living there, and I think the country has 38 million people. The city has a lot of history, and so much has happened there in the last few hundred years. They have a beautiful castle there that already exists for hundreds of years. There are so many areas in the city that are connected to the Second World War. Now there are so many hip new restaurants, cafes, bars. It's very international. Everyone speaks English. It's an absolute beautiful location. And when I was there, the weather was also great. So it was an absolute treat. Before we go into the content, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, share, press on the bell, press on all so you don't miss anything. And before we really get into the numbers, it's important to know that Poland has the zloty. Although they're part of Europe, they have their own currency, so they don't have the euro, they have the zloty. I didn't know that until across the border. But for this video, and to make it easy for everyone, I converted all the costs that I made into US dollars, because most of you know what the US dollar is, you know what it's worth, or you know what it's worth compared to your own currency. So then it's very easy for you to calculate with, or to understand how much money I spent there. So first up, let's start off with parking and gasoline, because yes, I took the car. At the time I was in Germany. No, I'm not German, but I was there, and I was able to take a car. Drove more than 600 kilometers to Krakow, and of course also the 600 kilometers back. I used the car a few times to do activities which were sometimes outside of the city, and yeah, all in all, we're driving up and down, had to fill up gas 4 times. Which, by the way, the gasoline in Poland is freaking cheap, especially compared to other European countries, or when you hear the crazy stuff that's going on now in England. The people are just in line to get gasoline. It's absolutely crazy. But in Poland anyways, it's super cheap. I cannot really remember what I paid for a liter, but because the car was a little bit tiny and the tank was therefore also a little bit tiny, that's why I had to fill up gas 4 times. But the amount that I eventually spent on filling up gas was $214. And next up is parking. Now, I parked the car a few times in front of the apartment, and sometimes you also have to pay for parking when you do an activity. There's a parking lot, you need to pay a few zlotys or euros or dollars, whatever, to park there for the entire day, which was of course all fine. The highest cost was when I decided to park the car into a underground secured parking lot right in the city center. I think the total cost in dollars was like $90 or $95 for an entire month, which of course is not super cheap. But on the other hand, you know, like I said, it's underground, it's secure 24/7, and it's right in the city center. And since my apartment was also in the city center, I could just walk everywhere. I didn't need the car unless I really went out. So I was happy to pay it. You probably could do it cheaper if you lived there and you can get a permit from the government. But yeah, like I said, you know, for what you got for it, I think it was a pretty fair deal. So I was happy to pay the price. Then the apartment, compared to all the custom made, the apartment was a little bit pricey. I mean, like in rental prices in general, it's kind of okay. I spent in total $1,179 for an entire month. I know people, let's say in the United States, they pay much more per month, but because the cost of living in Poland is in general pretty cheap, this is quite high. This was due to two things. A, location. I was right in the city center. I could walk everywhere. So of course that makes it a little bit more expensive. And the second thing is the housing market itself in Krakow. Now I had no idea until a local told me that the housing prices in that area completely went through the roof in the last few years. And therefore, yeah, of course, the one who bought the apartment bought it as an investment, need to buy it against higher prices, and therefore will also ask higher rental prices per day, per week, per month, whatever you're doing on an Airbnb. And the last thing is, of course, that Airbnb takes a pretty big chunk out of the rental price. I think that's 15 or 17% in total. So if you ever rent a place, imagine that the actual owner is not getting that amount, they're getting 15 or 17% less. So that's quite a lot. You could find much cheaper, but like I said, because of the location and the current condition of the housing market, I think that's why the price was a little bit higher than the average in that area. Next up is food and drinks. Now in this case, I combined everything together. Every time I went to the supermarket, I went out for dinner, went out for drinks, went to the bakery, whatever. You know, at the end of the day, it all ends up in your belly. So I just thought food and drinks all at one pile. And the total amount was $882. Now that is pretty pricey compared to what you can get for that kind of money. For instance, there is a typical dish in Poland. It's called pierogi. If you ever go there, please order it. It's amazing. It's like a tiny dumpling filled with something, and then they're gonna cook it. And that filling can be anything. It can be all kinds of meat, veggies, salmon, cheese. It's absolutely delicious. It's pretty heavy on the stomach, so I usually get like 8 or 10 pieces, like around this size, I would say. And then after that, you're completely full. I paid like $4 or $5 per dish. Add an extra drink, so for $5 or $6, you're done. So that is super, super cheap, of course, for a meal. And I think the average dinner in the city was around $8, $9, $10. Also add a drink, you will end up at like $11 or $12. I think that's a pretty good deal. The thing is, I went out for dinner every night and I went out for lunch every day. The only thing that I ate at home was actually breakfast. Just went to the supermarket, bought yogurt, fruits, muesli, and yeah, that's what I ate at home. It just saved me time for not going out again. And it was also just easy. Just start my day from home, work there a little bit, have breakfast, and later on go out there for lunch or for dinner. So yeah, it probably could have been much cheaper, but because the food was so good and it was relatively so cheap, that's why I went out every day, and that's how I ended up with $882. And then last but not least are the activities. Now I did something every weekend. There are tons of stuff that you can do around there. For instance, I went to Auschwitz. You probably heard of that. That's a concentration camp from the Second World War. I went to Schindler's Factory. If you don't know who Schindler is, watch the movie Schindler's List. It's made by Steven Spielberg. It's about a guy who saved a lot of Jews during the Second World War. I went to a beautiful castle, which is almost close to the city center. It's up a hill. It is huge. You can spend at least a full day there. It has so much history in there. I think it already existed for a few hundred years. It's been torn down, burned down, and every time they rebuild it again. There's also a big church there. There's a lot of expeditions that you can do, a lot of art, a lot of old weaponry which you can look at. It is it's really worth the trip. So if you're there, go to the castle. It's called the Wawel Castle. So yeah, definitely check that out when you're there. I also went to a salt mine, and I think I went to another museum, and I think I also took a massage once. So yeah, all ended up together. I came to the amount of $307, which I think is a pretty good deal for everything that I have done all together. And yeah, then when we add everything up, we come to the total sum of $2,714.11. Now I know this is like the average income or monthly spending of someone in the States, but knowing that this is East Europe in Poland, and you can get a meal for $5, $6, $7, this is actually quite a lot. Now I probably could have knocked off, I would say, somewhere between $300 and $500 if I would taken a different apartment, something that's maybe less in the city center, maybe something that's not as new as the one that I took. If I would have eaten inside a little bit more, didn't go out every day twice, I probably also would have saved some money there. But you know, at the end of the day, I do not regret it at all. All the food was amazing. I love the city. I love the people. I would highly recommend you to go there if you ever have the chance. If you want to do it really cheap, I think you can even go as low as $2,000 for the entire month. It will be around 1,800 euros. Alright, so I guess that's it. Now you know how much I spent living and working 1 month in Krakow. If you like these kind of videos, please let me know in the comments, because I will be moving more and more. Next stop will most likely be Mexico. And if you want to know more about how much I spend, where I am, where I spend my money on, please let me know. Of course, press the like button, press on the bell, press on all so that you don't miss anything. And if you want to share this video among your friends, that will be absolutely great. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.